everyone. Continuing with the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album and actually wrapping it up. This is the last song of the program. Now, Vlad is looking terrified at the back because he just told me, remember there are two, there's this one and another one. Yes, I know. I am going to stick to my guns. This is the last song of the program. What do I mean? We'll get to that in a few minutes. As I did with the previous song, I took a few minutes this morning to listen to it a couple times to refresh my memory. This, of course, is not my first listen. We are going to watch my first listen right now, and then I will read and we'll dive in and have some fun with it. Okay, first thing to notice about this song. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band Reprise. This is not the first time that we have heard this song, but at the same time, it's not the same as we heard it at the beginning. The official genre is hard rock, psychedelic rock, okay for what it's worth. And what do I have to read here? Up to this point, the Beatles would periodically re-record a previously recorded song for various reasons, most times because they thought the first version could be improved upon. A rarer occurrence for the group was when an early recording attempt and a later attempt were both released and initially available at the same time. However, in the case of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band Reprise, this was the only time a Beatles song was reworked and recorded purposely to act as a complement to the first with the intention of both being released together. Another unique fact regarding this song is that it wouldn't have existed at all if it hadn't have been for their road manager, Neil Aspinall. I used to share a flat in Sloane Street with Mal Evans, Neil writes in the book The Beatles Anthology. One day in February, Paul called saying that he was writing a song and asking if he and Mal could come over. This song that Neil Aspinall was referring to was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the first one. The theme song that begins the album, which Paul and Mal Evans began to write together on that day. Neil Aspinall continues, "At my place, he carried on writing and the song developed. At the end of every Beatles show, Paul used to say, 'It's time to go. We're going to go to bed, and this is our last number.'" That's so funny. So, I get the idea that John is the one that can't wake up in the morning. Paul is the one that can't wait for a show to be finished so he can go crash in bed at the end. Just then, Mal Evans went to the bathroom, and I said to Paul, "Why don't you have Sgt. Pepper as the compere of the album? He comes in at the beginning of the show and introduces the band, and at the end, he closes it." Paul evidently liked the idea and took to writing the song based on the chorus of the original theme song that he and Mal Evans had written. A bit later, Neil Aspinall recalls, Paul told John about it in the studio, and John came up to me and said, "Nobody likes a smartass, Neil." That was when I knew that John liked it and that it would happen. Okay, well, that's interesting for me to read because I already have built up this discussion about this whole Reprise thing, but it comes from my classical background. And so it's interesting to read here that it was kind of a non-standard thing. And, well, of course, it fits in with the idea of a concert. We'll talk more about that as we go. But, okay, that's how it came about. So let's dive in, start listening, and start enjoying it. Okay, first of all, that little moment. I don't know exactly who's doing that, but I'm guessing it's probably John. What does he say? He's saying, "Good night. Good night." Something. Goodbye. Maybe that's it. Bye. It's like it's got this sort of sarcastic bye, just as the final farewell piece is playing in the program. Well, of course, this is coming from, oh man, All I can think of is the Animal Farm. This is coming from Good Morning, Good Morning. Good morning, good morning. And this is almost like this is a remnant of the Animal Farm rooster call at the end. Donkey or something, right? Now, okay. Also, as you've noticed me starting to do with these pieces, I have found myself wanting, and so of course going to do a little bit of research on my own before I come sit down to do this second exploratory listen. And the thing that got my attention on this, well, I have to give a little bit of backstory. First of all, one of my wonderful, supportive, and very devoted fans, patrons, Lee Kennison, many of you know him, has called me out recently on my lack of attention to the drums and the drum patterns. And I have to say, thank you, Lee. You are acting as a true friend. And it's funny because I remember back when early on when I was working with Carl and I had my drum lesson with Carl, my ears were really tuned towards the drums, and there was this there ended up being a whole lot of commentary on the channel saying, but what about the guitar? What about the guitar? I guess I kind of overreacted and completely flipped my attention to the guitar, and it's gotten to the point where I have really neglected the drums, and they've kind of, although I notice them, I enjoy them, I haven't invested so much time in really mastering the details of drums. So this is kind of my, should I say my New Year's resolution? I don't know if I'm going to go so far as to do that because I really shy away from the whole New Year's resolution idea. But anyway, this is a moment where, thanks to Lee bringing it to my attention, I did realize, oh wow, that is something that I should invest more time in. And then, of course, perfect timing. Yesterday, the song I sat down and listened to was Centuries by Fall Out Boy. And if you watch that, you will see a moment where I am quite embarrassed about the fact that I don't know what I'm talking about with the drums, and yet I feel there's something distinctive. And so, of course, I thought, well, it sounds kind of like maybe what I think with rap music. Anyway, afterwards, of course, I had to go down a little rabbit hole and find out what on earth is the classic rap rhythm. I started a little Google search and nothing came up. And then I realized, okay, rap rhythm. I started seeing hip hop, and I realized, okay, hip hop is rap rhythm, etc. And so I went down this little rabbit hole and found a great little tutorial on what is the standard basic hip hop rhythm and then some of the variants. And so having done that, now this morning I sit down and listen to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band Reprise, and what do I hear with this drum opening? To me, it sounds astonishingly similar. It's uncanny that this opening drum pattern sounds so much like what I was just listening to in my little rabbit hole exploration of hip hop beat. And I'm curious to hear the rest of your thoughts on this as well. But this is what catches my ear. You can even, I'm already thinking of some of the variants I was listening to. Bum bum chi, dum bum bum, dum dum chi, dum bum bum, and all of this. So, in a way, it feels like another moment of, here are the Beatles, ahead of their time, anticipating a rhythm which would become, or even a style, a subgenre that would become its own identity down the road. And I don't know if, okay, truth is, I'm not an expert on this. That's why I'm asking for your input. How much of this could you really call hip hop? And, tell me your thoughts, because it's because of the context and where I just came from. in my listening and exploration yesterday, now I'm sitting down today to listen to this, and that, of course, jumps out at my attention. So please give me some feedback on that. Those of you who are experts and very familiar with all these styles, I would love to hear more. But that is something that I kind of have this feeling that Beatles were perhaps, once again, ahead of their time. Another thing I wanted to talk about, I made sure before I sat down and listened to this that I also went back and listened to the opening Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band number, because clearly there is a strong link between these two. And one of the things I noticed is that this reprise is a bit quicker in tempo. The opening is a little bit more fanfare-like, overture style, we could say. This is a little bit more upbeat, the final number in a program. And one of the things that I want to make a point of today as I'm listening to this, and kind of, as I said, it's interesting to hear how they developed the idea of this. But we've had this conversation going on throughout this album. What is it that makes this album feel so unified, so solid together, so much like it all belongs in one experience, even though there are so many disparate styles and ideas presented here? There are several things at play. One of which is this, the sort of bookend, but it's more than bookends. Think about back to your school days, learning to write an essay. You have this form that you have to follow. You have the introduction, and then you have your various paragraphs, the body, and then you have your conclusion. It is a classic form. It is a form that we find in music as well, in, let's say, sonata allegro form, a really classic form. Here also we find sort of that idea. We have the introduction, the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Then we have the entire concert, which takes us through some wonderful experiences and all kinds of journeys. And then we are brought back around to the conclusion, wrapping it up. A nice, tight little package, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band Reprise. And just like a conclusion, it's not long-winded, it's not in-depth, it simply sums it up, and that's it. And that is why I said at the beginning, this is the final number on the program. If I were going to a classical concert where there was a printed program, the pieces on the, and perhaps even some program notes talking about each piece, whatever, this would be the last one listed. The last. That doesn't mean it would be the last one we hear, but it would be the last one on the planned program. And so it is here. I feel like this is such a great example of classic form. It's one of the things that makes this album feel so incredibly unified. It goes even deeper than that. But let's listen a bit further, because I want to point this out when we get to it in the song. There, that is a transposition, a modulation. Suddenly, we move up a step. We started in the key of F major. You can see by the key signature here. And we've been going along in the key of F major. And then Sgt. Pepper's Lonely, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely. And then there's this moment where things kind of shift and change. And maybe you don't know exactly what's happening there. But you hear it kind of moves up in pitch a bit. Well, actually, I talked about a moment like this in the opening Sgt. Pepper's number. This one is a bit different here. But we still feel this shift, and it serves a different function. than the one at the beginning. At the beginning, it was all about building excitement, building suspense, building intensity towards a climax, towards the grand entrance of the star of the show. Well, here, this is coming to the end. Why are we shifting up again? Why? Well, because if we were to look back at the opening piece, we would find that it began in the key of G major. That is, built on the G chord. Okay, fair enough. We've been through all kinds of journeys. We have traveled through minors and majors and different keys, sometimes related, sometimes unrelated. In fact, I think I might have even mentioned this as when I started this album project, that when one is creating a concert, there are many factors to take into account if you want to make it feel unified. And one of the things that we think about as performers, as designers of programs, musical programs, is key centers. And how do those key centers relate one to another from one song to the next and throughout the entire program, so that it feels like there is not just harmonic and tonal sense and logic within a piece, but also from piece to piece over the broad course of things. Think of it kind of like chapters in a book. Even if your book is a collection of different stories, there has to be something that helps hold them together. And in music, one of the things that helps us not only create contrast, but also create a sense of unity and continuity is key center, tonal center. What key are we building each song in? Well, some of these songs that we've listened to on this album haven't even been in a single key themselves. They've moved through multiple keys. It doesn't have to be static. There just has to be logic, and there has to be something that holds it together. Well, back to this idea here. We started in the key of G major. We've been through all kinds of journeys along the way. Now, coming to the end of the program, this final song on the printed program leaflet, if we were sitting down to listen to the concert, would be this one, not the following one. This one. And this one is the one that brings us back around and finishes us off in the same key in which we began, the key of G major. But it doesn't start that way. It starts in F major. It starts us off here. We're not consciously aware of that. It's been a long program. We don't remember all of that, but somehow in the back of our minds, our oral memory recognizes things. And so even though we don't consciously recognize what's happening, the fact that we are brought back home to the key of G through the act of listening to this song, it helps to wrap up the package and tie it in a nice little bow, sealed, perfectly formed. And that is one of the important reasons for this particular modulation. Of course, this is a happy concert. It's a concert. It has taken us to some dark places, some sad places, some lonely places, some deep inward-looking places, but overall, it's been upbeat and cheerful and uplifting. So we want, at the end, we want it to leave us feeling uplifted. How do you do that? Raise the pitch. Which means if you want to finish us in the key of G, plus you want to raise the pitch, you just have to start a note lower. So we start in F. Then we move to G. And this is that special moment right here where we find ourselves moving from F into G. Let's back up just a little bit. Sgt. Pepper's is different from Sgt. Pepper's. That's it. Sgt. Pepper's lonely. All right, and here at the end, how do you wrap up a piece like this that has us moving? Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Sergeant. I kind of like this moment where it says, Sergeant Pepper's one and only Lonely Hearts Club Band. A nice little variant and kind of cashing in on the musical rhythm and sound of the words. You're not just dealing with rhythm, but you're also going for the vowels and the consonants. One and only Lonely Hearts Club Band. Such a nice little bit there. It comes and goes so quickly we almost don't notice it. And then how to end a piece. This great augmentation of the Hearts Club Band. Whoops, there goes my pencil. Talk to any one of my students, and you will get to hear stories of my pencil flying across the room. Sorry. But this augmentation, this grand expansion of the rhythm, of putting emphasis on every single syllable and holding it out, it adds a bit of flair and panache at the end, especially after we've been kind of falling into this groove, this kind of happy bouncing along, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely. Sergeant Pepper's Lonely. Applause as if it were the final number. Again, I'm emphasizing this. This song is not about coming up with something new musically to say. It is about wrapping up the program and concluding the journey. This is the conclusion of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band journey that we've been on. Why am I emphasizing this so much? Because it has a lot to do with how we experience the next song, which we'll get to eventually. But that is what I find the most outstanding thing about this piece. And I have to say, it's beautiful to see this level of formal awareness, formal design. I don't know, just as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, the image of Michelangelo's David comes to mind, the beauty of the classic formal structure and the balance of it. I'm not saying that always is the ideal we're striving towards, but whenever we find that kind of architectural, artistic, visual, sonic, literary balance and shape and form, it always affects us in the same way that we begin to think, wow, this is a thing of beauty. So it is here that somehow Beatles have taken this album and made it a thing of beauty. Start to finish. It's been loads of fun. Just great fun. It's been, as I said, like biting into a fresh off the tree piece of citrus, skin and all. It just comes wide awake and alive and vivid and intense, all of that. But with all of that, it is still a thing of beauty. And this little piece has a lot to do with that. Try to imagine this album without this particular piece. There are several songs on this album that we could dispense with, assuming we never knew they existed, right? And it would still be a great journey. We would not miss them formally, just like, if you have a wonderfully written essay with all kinds of material in it, you can manage to pull out a paragraph or two, and if it's well designed enough, you can still make it fit together without that, and it works. You just decide, I've got too many words in my essay for the word count, so I have to compress it, right? But you still have to have a conclusion. And for that reason, this particular song is incredibly important to how we experience this complete Sgt. Pepper's experience, shall I say. And so again, as I said, this song is not about innovation. It's not about saying something new in this program. Having said that, and as I said at the beginning with my whole exploration of hip-hop drum patterns, I would love to hear your thoughts on whether it does say something new in the larger context of musical styles. I'm curious. So please, as I said, add your commentary. I'll be reading and following along. But this brings us to the end of the programmed Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club show and Lonely Hearts Club Band show. And I can hardly wait to get to the next song because, as I mentioned, this is not the last one on the album. This is the last one on the printed program, if we can use our imagination like that. I can hardly wait to get to A Day in the Life because I know so many of you are sitting on the edge of your seats waiting for it. I know that Vlad, sitting behind the camera here, can hardly stand it until I get there. And I know that I am eager to dive in and share my thoughts about why does it even belong here on this album, since I've made such an emphasis of this being the end of the printed program. That's going to come next time. I'll see you soon.